Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Framework of Tomorrow. I am your host, Keegan Goldfarb, and today I will be talking about the history of Ford and how they are the future of automobiles. But as always, before I get into my episodes, I want to talk about my sponsor here on the show, as well as the network that I'm in, rallynetwork.net. You can go check us out. I want to talk about my sponsor, Ashley Luann Kay, aka also known as the Minnesota Nurse. Go check her out on Instagram. If you are pursuing a higher education or want insight on life as a nurse, go check out Ashley Luann Kay at the Minnesota Nurse on Instagram. Make sure you go and do that. It helps not only me, it helps her, and it helps the network as well. And go, like I said before this, I am also a part of a network called Rally Network. You can go check us out at rallynetwork.net. And yes, you will find a group of podcasters, including myself, that just want to initiate kind of thought into, or provoke thought into the community. So today I'm going to be talking about why I believe, I'm going to be talking about the history of Ford and why I believe they are the future of automobiles and cars. Well, same thing. But yeah, so before I kind of get into that, I want to talk about something they had on their website. So, well, there's a couple things. Actually, everything I'm getting is from their website today. What am I talking about? But the first thing I wanted to read for you here was kind of their about thing on their website. So, since 1903, Ford Motor Company has built iconic vehicles including Model T, Continental Mustang, F-Series, and Bronco. They have also manufactured many other products such as airplanes, radios, refrigerators, postal machines, and weather satellites. I actually did not know that before I started doing research. And Ford, I guess the reason I'm covering specifically Ford is because I really love Ford. I love their cars. My favorite car of all time is Mustang. I love Ford Mustang, especially Mustang GTs. And specifically, I really like the 2016, 2018 models. I know they're fairly new, but I really like them. And yes, as well as I'm not as big of a fan of Bronco as my friend Mike on BRCM Daily. He's one of the people in our network at Rally Network. He loves the Ford Bronco, and apparently this year they're going to be releasing they're going to be talking about, they're going to re-release the Ford Bronco because they haven't made, I can't remember how long it's been since they made a model, but that's pretty exciting and I'm excited for him. So I'm super into kind of reading about that and kind of the updates on that because I know he'll be super excited when they do that. And also the Ford Mustang, the next one has been rumored to be all-wheel drive, which would be perfect. If you didn't know, I don't even know if I've said this on the podcast before. I live in Minnesota, and with all of the winter and snow and stuff we have, an all-wheel drive Mustang would make it, you could justify that for Minnesota, because otherwise you can't, because rear-wheel drive is not fun to drive in the winter, and it's hard to get around. But yes, I digress. Anyway, a little bit more about Ford. So Ford Motor Company began in 1903, like I said, with only a staff of about 10 people, and has now grown to employ thousands of talented women and men who regularly innovate to deliver a variety of mobility choices. And our team collaborates worldwide to provide new transportation solutions to our customers. During their first year, Ford Motor Company established an international presence with its first foreign branch in Walkerville, Canada. Currently, Ford has operations across North America and in over 124 countries around the world. That's another thing that I thought was really cool, especially I know a couple people who work for Ford, and I've just heard that working for Ford is like one of the coolest things you can do. And they treat their employees very well, and they're just a good company to work for. So I guess that's something I can appreciate. It's kind of the same thing with Chick-fil-A. I know a couple people, well, actually, I know a lot of people who work at Chick-fil-A, And all I've heard is that they treat their employees so well, which is probably how they're so successful, because once you treat your employees well, then they're going to treat the customers well, and it's just going to be overall good service. And that's kind of why I personally really, really like Ford. So that's kind of a couple of the things they had on their website off the like a little about thing. So now I kind of want to get a little bit more into the history of Ford. So, like I said, Ford, when they first became a company, was 1903. But before that, Henry Ford, the founder of Ford, in 1896, he built the quadricycle. So Henry Ford's first vehicle rode on 4 bicycle wheels and was powered by a 4 horsepower engine instead of a steering wheel. The quadricycle, I can't even say it, had a tiller, you know what I'm trying to say, had a tiller. The gearbox had only 2 forward gears with no reverse. So if you want to see this timeline, you can actually go to Ford and follow along with me. But if you can't, I'll try to describe this for you. So what I'm looking at is it really does look like a contraption with 4 bicycle wheels, and then you can see the there's like a handbrake. It looks like the shifter that I mentioned there. It's hilarious. It looks amazing though. That's so cool. In 1896, he made that. So, and then in 1899, Henry Ford joins a group that founds the Detroit Automobile Company. So Ford leaves. Oh, okay. And then Henry Ford leaves this company within 1 year. I'm assuming to start his own company following this year. So Henry Ford in 1901 defeats the top race car driver of the era. So Ford designed the 26 horsepower sweepstakes and defeated Alexander Winston's 70 horsepower Bullet in 10 laps around the 1 mile oval in the Detroit Driving Club. The victory led to Henry Ford's second short-lived attempt at audio manufacture, the Henry Ford Company. So that race led into Ford kind of becoming a company. And I know this is in racing specifically. That's kind of how Ford and Chevy kind of get their rivalry, because they kind of go head to head within racing and stuff like that. So then in 1903, the Ford Motor Company is incorporated. With 12 investors and 1,000 shares, the company had spent almost all of its $28,000 cash investment by the time it sold the first Ford Model A on July 23rd, 1903. But on October 1st, 1903, Ford Motor Company had turned a profit of $37,000. So they had, wow, that's crazy. So they put into, Henry Ford put $28,000 of investment of all the money he got from the 12 investors, and he made a profit of $37,000. That's amazing, especially in 1903. That's a lot of money. So then in 1904, then Ford Motor Company in Canada is founded. Ford's first international plant was built in Walkerville, now Windsor. I didn't actually know that changed. Ontario, right across the Detroit River from Ford's existing facilities. The company was a separate organization with its own set of shareholders. It was created to sell vehicles not just in Canada, but also across the then current British Empire. So Ford kind of goes international here, not only in Canada, but also expands over to the British Empire. And then in 1907, Ford introduced the scripted typeface of its trademark. So, wow, it took them 4 years until they actually had their logo, like their trademark logo. It looks like here. Yeah, wow. And then so in 1908, moving along here, Ford introduces the Model T. Henry Ford's Model T put the world on wheels with a simple, affordable, durable automobile. Ford sold 15 million Model Ts before ceasing production in May 1927, making it one of the most best-selling vehicles of all time and arguably the most famous car around the world. I have actually seen this car before. I think I've seen a Model T in person. And it's funny because, like I said, you can look this up, the Ford Model T. If you're not familiar with it, you've probably seen one of these too, because these are majorly famous. They, in 1908 as well, they also opened their first overseas sales branch in Paris. Very cool. All right. And then getting into the 1910s, we have, in 1913, Ford introduces the integrated moving assembly line to auto production. So Ford's innovation eventually reduced the Model T's. Oh, wow. It takes, holy cow. So with this, their new assembly line here, it originally took them 12.5 hours for the assembly line of the Model T to 1.5 hours. And in doing so, participated in a revolution in manufacturing. Holy cow. The accelerating speed with which Ford could produce cars helped him continue to lower the price of the Model T. In 1914, Ford institutes the famous $5 day. In 1914, $5 per day was double the existing pay rate for factory workers. And on top of that, Ford reduced the workday from 9 to 8 hours. The day after the $5 day was announced, an estimated 10,000 people lined up outside Ford's employment office hoping to be hired. Ford increased pay greatly, improved employee retention since the monotonous and strenuous work of moving assembly line was causing high turnover. So that's crazy. Even back in 1914, like I was talking about before I kind of got into the history of this, they treat their employees very well. That goes all the way back to 1914 when they were they were treating their employees so well that they had 10,000 people lined up outside Ford's employment office. That is nuts. That's crazy. In 1917, Ford begins construction of River Road Complex. So it's another factory to produce more cars. Also in 1917, Ford produces its first ever truck, the Ford Model TT. TT was based on the Model T car. It kind of looks like the front of it looks like a Model T car. But it looks like a truck. That's hilarious. The truck looks so funny. This early pickup was rated at 1 ton. Wow, it's heavy. All right. And then 1918, Ford River Road Complex began manufacturing anti-submarine patrol boats. Okay, so Ford was involved with, looks like World War I, and helped produce some of the anti-submarine. Interesting. Some of the boats. Huh. And then in 1914, Edsel Ford succeeds Henry Ford as president of the company. Yeah, okay. So even just so far, before we even get into the 20s, from his first invention in 1896 until 1920, a lot happens, and Ford is kind of the staple of the automobile companies here, and they're just going crazy. So and get into the 1920s. 1922, Ford acquires the Lincoln Motor Company. Oh, okay. So Ford purchased Lincoln from Henry Leland, his former business associate from the Detroit Automobile Company. Since then, Lincoln has produced many luxury cars and historical and aesthetic note, including the 1931, 1939 K Series, 1936 Zephyr. I don't actually know that one. Edsel Ford's original Continental, the ensuing first-generation Lincoln Continental, and the classic 57 Continental Mark II. In 1925, they start producing airplanes, tri-motor airplanes. In 27, Ford begins selling the 1928 Model A. So this is when we see the Model A come into play. Getting into the 1930s, I am kind of flying along. If you want to go actually read beneath these in the timeline, you can do that. But I don't want to read every single one because that would take forever. Sorry, I got to take a drink. 1932, Ford introduces the flathead V8 engine. Of course, this isn't the same V8 engine I have today because it looks different. But in my car, I have a Grand Marquis, and that's actually a luxury brand of Ford. And I have a Mercury Grand Marquis, and Mercury, sorry, is the luxury brand. Grand Marquis is part of that line of cars, but it's it has I have a V8 engine in mine, and that's really cool. So then in 1936, Ford began selling the Lincoln Zephyr line. Like I said, 38, Ford unveils the minimum priced Mercury brand. That's what I'm talking about. I just talked about that. That's funny. The first Mercury was 1939 Mercury 8, which had a V8 engine and a stylish body characteristic of Edsel Ford design sense. I don't actually know if I'm saying that name right, but I think I am. That's crazy, though. Mercury doesn't actually exist anymore, sadly. They don't produce any more Mercury. I don't know the year they stopped. Mine is a 2001, 2002 Grand Marquis. And I think they go until like, I don't know if I've ever seen anything past 2012. I think it was pretty recent they stopped. All right, so then in the 40s, 1941, Ford signs its first contract with the UAW-CIO, which is basically making better pay and more benefits and working conditions for employees in Detroit's major, like in their stuff for their employees. 1941, Ford halts civilian auto production in the United States to produce military equipment. So once again, they start working with the military, and they cease making cars and kind of move in to help our military in World War II. So I think Ford really is kind of the... I'm sure other companies were doing this at the same time as well, but it's really... Oh, and this was actually... Ford was involved in the Roswell... Monroe, the "We Can Do It" poster. That's really funny. But I think it's really cool that they were actually helping our country out, and I think that kind of just puts into a staple on how cool it is that private companies in the United States can help work with the United States government to help produce. And they did this. Obviously, they were getting money from it, but they also did it because. At least I would hope they did it because out of like their love for America. 1943, Edsel Ford dies. So Edsel was the only child of Henry and Clara Ford. After his death, Henry Ford returned to his former position as the president of Ford Motor Company. Well, so Henry Ford II becomes president of the Ford Motor Company in 1945. 1948, Ford introduces the F-Series line of trucks. With its post-war truck design, Ford ceased building trucks on car platforms and used a purpose-built truck platform instead. The truck was available in 8 sizes and weight ratings from half-ton capacity F1 to the 3-ton capacity F8. And then in 1948, Ford introduces the 1949 Ford. Hang on, I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background. There must be another dog outside. 1954, Ford introduces the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird, yes. The T-Bird emphasized comfort and convenience over sportsiness. With its performance design and distinctive porthole windows, the car would become a classic. And it did, because the Thunderbird is definitely a classic. In 54 as well, same year Thunderbird came out, Ford begins crash testing its vehicles. So they start doing improvements on, how well they perform in crashes or accidents, stuff like that. 1956, Ford becomes a publicly traded company. At the time, Ford's initial public offering of common stock shares was the largest IPO in history. Also in 56, the Continental division of Ford Motor Company introduces the Continental Mark II. 57, Ford introduces the Edsel. So remember how the second president of Ford was Edsel, or I can't pronounce his name right. They actually came out with a line of a car named after him, and it is one of the most valuable collector car to this day. And that's a really cool car. I've never actually seen that car before, but that is a really cool car. I would love to see that in person, actually. 1959, Ford Credit is founded. The full name of Ford's financial services arm is Ford Motor Credit Company, LLC, and today the company offers loans and leases to car buyers, in addition to loans and lines of credit for Ford and other dealerships. 1964, my favorite time in Ford history, the Ford Mustang goes on sale. Yes. That's all I have to say. 65, Ford engineers unveil the Mission Control Center to put a man on the moon. I did not know they were actually involved in that, but they were. That's really cool. 65, also, Ford Germany and Ford UK collaborate and release the Transit in Europe. 66, 3 Ford GT 40 Mark IIs sweep the podium at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So this is another racing thing, what I was talking about, on how Ford was involved in that a lot. 1970, Ford introduces 3-point self-adjusting and retracting front outboard lap and shoulder belts. 76, Ford of Europe introduces the Ford Fiesta. Oh, I remember. I think Ford Fiesta still exists today. That's a cool car. 78, Ford introduces the downsized Panther platform. 1980, Philip Cadwell succeeds Henry Ford II. So Philip Cadwell is the fourth president of Ford. 1981, Ford begins selling the fifth generation Escort World Car. When the Ford Escort was first sold in North America, the car was designed to share components with the European Escort. As such, in its first year, the North American car featured a badge with the name Escort superimposed over a globe instead of a blue oval. The car was one of Ford's best-selling vehicles in the 80s. 1985, Ford revolutionizes automotive design with the Taurus. The Ford Taurus, yes. 1986, Ford introduces the modular assembly line at its St. Louis assembly plant. 1990, Ford introduces the Ford Explorer. 1996, Ford introduces the Mondeo as its new global sedan. I know I'm flying through this, so I'm hoping you're staying you're staying with me here, because there's a lot here. In 1996, Ford produces the Ford Ranger electric vehicle. So, wow. The Ranger EV was a forerunner to today's electric vehicles and hybrid energy systems. In 98, the introduction of the Lincoln Navigator spurs rapid growth in the luxury SUV segment. 2001, great year. Ford's board of directors names Bill Ford to replace Yaquz Nasser, I think I'm saying that right, as CEO. 2003, Ford celebrates its 100th anniversary. In 2004, Ford introduced the GT as its premium sports car. Remember how I was talking about? I know I keep bringing this up. Ford is in like racing and stuff like that. That is the mid-engine 550 horsepower Ford GT was inspired by the legendary GT40 race cars that I was talking about. In 2006, Alan Mully becomes Ford's president and CEO. So I think he's the fifth then? I'm pretty sure he's the fifth, and I'm pretty sure he's still the CEO. Could be wrong. 2007, Ford begins offering sync in vehicles sold 2008 models. Created from a partnership between Ford and Microsoft, Sync offers a hands-free, voice-activated connectivity system with mobile phone integration, navigation, and voice activation, access to entertainment. Ford has continually updated Sync since its introduction to offer help drivers keep their hands on their wheel and their eyes on the road while remaining connected to their technology. It's really cool that Microsoft could be involved in the Ford company. Ford begins offering its turbocharged EcoBoost line of engines. And then, so in the 2010s, like I said, it's also really weird to say that. Like I was talking about, in 2011, Ford discontinues the Mercury line to concentrate more efforts on the Ford and Lincoln brands. Big sad. I liked the Mercurys. 2014, Ford introduces the 13th generation 2015 F-150. Great cars. 2014, Ford Mustang celebrates its 58th anniversary. Great year. Love the Mustangs. Mark Field succeeds Alan Mully as Ford's president and CEO. I'm sorry if you heard that. One of the dogs just came running downstairs. 2016, Ford Smart Mobility LLC is created. So that's more of, what is this? With a focus on changing the way the world moves, Ford Smart Mobility takes the company to the next level in connectivity, mobility, autonomous vehicles, the consumer experience, and data and analytics. In 2016, Ford celebrates 50-year anniversary of 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is also, like I said, I'm blanking. 50 years before 1960, they had the race, the Le Mans race, like I was talking about, and it's just the 50-year anniversary of that. In 2017, Jim Hackett becomes Ford CEO. So that's the sixth. Yes, that's the sixth, I believe. And then finally in 2018, Ford acquires Corktown Campus. Michigan Central Station, shuttered 30 years ago, will be redevelopment over the next 3 to 4 years into a magnet for high-tech talent and regional destination with modern workspaces, retail restaurants, residential living, and more. So that was a very long, I did not realize that was going to take that long, but that's a very summed up, I guess, the history of Ford right there. What is Ford doing now for the future? I kind of want to talk about this very briefly. What Ford is doing for the future is a lot of things. They've been helping a lot with the coronavirus pandemic, supplying new jobs and workers. They've been still working around the world with everyone for like the coronavirus stuff. They've been building ventilators, and they've been helping with fund testing, kind of helping create more testing kits for that, as well as working with 3D printing technology, and continuing to enhance their brands as well as their products. And I just really think it's so amazing to see a company that's been around this long be involved in not only the development and the evolution of, I guess, cars to this day, but in other things as well, such as when a global pandemic happens and they are helping fund that and help with that. And when there's war times, they were helping create new planes and help push that stuff out. So Ford really is, what I'm saying here is Ford is the best company in the world. I'm just kidding, but they are a very cool company. And I think I really wanted to talk about this and kind of educate everyone, including myself, on how a private company can really do a lot of good in the world. So that's kind of my whole episode on Ford and why I believe Ford is the future of automobiles and the future of, I guess, being an example for other private companies and stuff like that. As always, I have a random history fact at the end of the day, and this one I didn't include in Ford's history, but Henry Ford and Thomas Edison were actually lifelong friends, and as requested by Ford, Thomas Edison's son captured Edison's last exhale into a test tube and actually sealed it with the cork. Ford kept the tube as a memorial to Edison's life and breath. So that's kind of creepy, kind of interesting, but nevertheless kind of cool. And a random history fact, so yeah. But thank you so much for sticking around. Hopefully you made it this far, and hopefully I didn't bore you too much with the history of Ford. I think it was super interesting. I did fly through it, so if you are interested, go to Ford.com and check out their About Me tab. I am not sponsored by Ford, but I wish I was. Maybe get a Mustang that I could help promote. Hint, hint. But make sure to go check me out on Instagram at The Framework of Tomorrow and send me thoughts or questions at theframeworkoftomorrow@gmail.com. And make sure to rate me 5 stars on iTunes, and I will shout you out at the beginning of my episode. I upload every Monday and Wednesday at 5 a.m. And make sure to have a great rest of your day and your week. And make sure to tune in on Wednesday for another fantastic episode of The Framework of Tomorrow.